of food. Others are dying because of lack of access to clinics, health services, because we don't know and we can't provide them energy. We can't. The Sustainable Development Goals, the United Nations was very clear. The Millennium Development Goals, most of the goals were achieved because countries were able to provide energy. And it's clearly stated the Sustainable Development Goals will not be attained, will not be achieved if countries fail to provide energy. That is what we are doing. So this rain, if it is available, let us manage it. Professor Dr. Salman clearly stated it. In the Sahara, in Lake Nasser, we are losing more than 15 billion cubic meters of water to evaporation. And we have Dr. Harris, Engineer Harris in colonial times in Egypt, who recommended actually building dams in Ethiopia is very beneficiary to Egypt and Sudan because the evaporation rate in Ethiopia is very low because our dams will be built in a very narrow but deep gorge. That is how we can enhance benefits, and that's how we can enhance, increase the pie to the benefit of our people. If, Nevana, if you are talking about the rain, let us talk about the 55,000 billion cubic meters of underground water in Egypt, which is equivalent to the 500 years flow of the Nile. It's not me who's saying this. It is the International Atomic Energy Agency. It is the scientists who are saying this.
I'm just going to stop you there to speak, to give everyone else a chance to speak, because we're going to have to wrap it up soon. Salman, you've been listening to this. Do you have anything to add to what?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I have to correct the record. Sudan did not ask for did not say that the negotiations have failed. No, Sudan has confirmed that the issue is before the heads of the states. And even today, the report, the announcement by the Secretary General of the United Nations complemented the position of Sudan that is taking of continuing the negotiations and going back and going to the African Union in case there is a need to go to the African Union. So I think the record has to be corrected that Sudan never said in any of its memos or any of its announcements that the negotiations have failed, and which could be used to pave the way for going to the Security Council. Regarding the claim that the 1959 agreement should be viewed within the time frame. Sudan became independent, and Egypt was trying to help Sudan, and it shouldn't be viewed as otherwise in the time frame. And I think no, that's not the only. That's the way you look at it. Ethiopia has asked for participation in the negotiations. Britain, on behalf of these colonies, Kenya, Tanzania at that time, and Uganda, asked for participation in the negotiations, and the Sudan and Egypt just ignored those requests and went ahead with it. So it can't really be taken in the time frame, because the river is always the river. And why would it be taken in the frame if Sudan and Egypt are going to say the agreement has established rights which have to be respected by the others? It's not taken in the frame. It is taken in the entire duration of life. I mean, Sudan is still talking about its rights under the agreement and 1959 agreement, and Egypt is talking about existing uses and rights under the 1959 agreement. And Nirvana made it look like as if Egypt was helping Sudan by the 1959 agreement.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
But you made it look. You were trying Sudan was Egypt was trying to help.
Fair interpretation.
You said Egypt was trying to help newly independent Sudan. That's what you said.
Try to reach newly independent Sudan and build bridges with it.
Exactly. Okay, but that's when you say that it's trying to help Sudan. I mean, but I think this is the worst agreement that any government in Khartoum could have signed. The worst agreement. It allowed the resettlement of 50 Sudanese indigenous peoples in the north. They were moved to an area that's completely different, destroyed their life. The lake submerged 2 million fedans, acres of land, fertile land, because Lake Nasser extended 150 kilometers inside Sudan. And Sudan got 18.5 billion, and then had to share the evaporation losses because it was cut in before it was deducted before from the 84 billion. And for the people who were resettled, the 50,000 Sudanese, Sudan got 15 million Egyptian pounds, and after lengthy negotiations went around and around, and Sudan was asking for 37 million, and Egypt was only giving 10 million, and then Sudan went down to 25, and then to 20, and then the issue was settled by arbitration by President Nasser, who added the 20 and the 10 and divided them by 2 like any arbitrator would do. So I think Sudan got a very raw deal. They did not get any electricity, the huge amount of electricity that was generated by the Aswan High Dam, the more than 2,000. And it got 18.5 million, which I don't think, I mean, under international law and then equitable and reasonable utilization, depending on what the others would say, it would probably have gotten something close to that without giving all that it has given, without all the harm that was caused by the dam. And then there's a lot of archaeological area that was drowned, a lot of minerals that were drowned, and a lot of more than 2 million palm trees were drowned, and the city, beautiful city of Wadi Halfa, very beautiful historical city, drowned. So Sudan got really a very raw deal to get 18.5 million, and to have a lake extend in your territory of 150, and to go through all that they went through, socially, environmentally, historical sites. So it wasn't really to build bridges or anything. It was to build the high dam for the benefit of Egypt, and whatever happens to Sudan happens to Sudan. And it was very unfortunate that the Sudanese government negotiated and accepted that deal.
Sudan stand to gain positively from the filling of the Renaissance Dam, Dr. Salman?
Yeah, there are a number of benefits, and there are issues that Sudan, risks for Sudan. The benefits is that the Blue Nile is a seasonal river. It runs from June to September with lots of floods. About 75% of its water comes from June to September. For the rest of the year, the river runs for about 25%. So Sudan can only use the river for irrigation during this period. So it has one crop rotation. The GERD will regulate the flow of the river throughout the year. There won't be floods because there is no high season and flood, and there is no low season. So the first thing is that there will be no floods. Just like the high dam in Egypt has stopped the floods in Egypt, the GERD will stop the floods in Sudan. Second, because the river will flow throughout the year, Sudan can, if it puts its tasks together, can have 2 or 3 crop rotations instead of 1 crop rotation, just like Egypt has 2 or 3 crop rotations. Because this one high dam regulated the flow of the river inside Egypt throughout the year instead of making it seasonal. So that's the second benefit. The third benefit is that Sudan has huge problem with electricity, and it's buying electricity now from Ethiopia. I think about 200, sometimes it goes to 250 megawatt a day from Ethiopia. So the regulation of the flow of the Blue Nile will allow Sudan in Rosaires Dam and even in Merowe Dam to produce electricity throughout the year, not just during the flood season. So in some of the studies that were prepared by the Ministry of Irrigation indicate that there could be an increase of 30 to 40% in the production of electricity after the GERD as opposed to before the GERD. Groundwater will be replenished throughout the year rather than through those months. Navigation will be regulated throughout the year. So those are the benefits that Sudan will gain. The risks, of course, the major risk Sudan is talking about, and which is occupying a lot of people, and which is being used very effectively by those opposing the dam, is the question of the safety of the dam. And that's one thing that the agreement, the agreement that's being negotiated now is highlighting, and that's one of the main concerns of Sudan with regard to any risk factor on the safety of the GERD will really cause huge damage to Sudan, from the border up to Khartoum, probably beyond Khartoum. So Sudan has to make sure that the issue of the safety are really taken care on all the plans. The other concern for Sudan is there is a dam called Rosaires Dam, which is about 100 kilometers from the GERD. The GERD is just close, about 20 kilometers from the border, and then from Sudanese border, and then Rosaires Dam is about 80 kilometers from the border. So it's about roughly 100 kilometers. And it's a small dam. It is 1/10 in terms of capacity. The GERD will take about 74 billion cubic meters. Roseris Dam is about 7 billion, just 1/10. So the operation of the two dams in terms of coordination of the flow and the amount of water and the timing of it, if it is not well done and well studied and well done and well implemented, could really cause lots of problems for Roseris Dam. So the issues for Sudan is the safety of the dam on this, and then in addition to this, the issue of the coordination between Roseris and the GERD. There are two studies that were supposed to be undertaken in the last 8 years since the report of the International Panel of Experts was issued. It recommended two in-depth studies on the downstream effects and the economic and social impact assessment. Those studies just, unfortunately, again, lack of cooperation. And I'm coming to cooperation when I conclude. Those studies have not been done. And Sudan still want to know what are the other negative environmental impacts that could come and how they could be eliminated or at least mitigated. So Sudan is insisting on those studies. So those three things: the safety of the dam, coordination between GERD and the Roseris, and the issue of those two studies. But having said all this, and I really should have started, I think there is enough water in the Nile for all the riparians. It is issue of cooperation that is missing. And if you look at really the Nile as a unit, not as just water, there is a lot of hydropower that could be generated in Ethiopia, could be used throughout the Nile countries. It's about the studies that were prepared by the American Corps of Engineers in 1960 indicated that 30,000 megawatt could be generated from the Nile. And that study was done in the 60s. I'm sure if it has been updated, it could be more. The land in Sudan that could be irrigated from the Nile is huge, and Sudan is irrigating about 10-15% of its land from irrigable land. The Lake Victoria has a lot of fisheries that can be developed for the use of the Nile basin countries. South Sudan has a lot of livestock which is not commercialized. It can be used to feed the population of the Nile. Egypt has huge, tremendous agro-industrial capabilities. So I have been, and this is what I've been talking, I look as though I'm criticizing Egypt and Sudan, but I think the issue is really, and I'm criticizing them because of lack of cooperation, which is a responsibility of everyone. If we really look at the Nile as a unit and start talking about benefits, not water, benefit sharing, I think the Nile countries could be one of the most advanced, developed, rich, and successful countries in the region. The issue that's missing is really lack of cooperation, lack of goodwill, and lack of good faith.
We'll make those the concluding remarks for Dr. Salman. Nirvana, if you want to share your concluding remarks.
Sure. Just to Dr. Solomon, I think the Ethiopian delegation will benefit from you because I didn't hear a single criticism for Ethiopia up to now. It's a lot of bashing for your own country and for Egypt and for myself.
Anne-Marie, I resent this. I resent Anne-Marie chairing the meeting. I resent this statement, and I think the speaker...
Give me one criticism for Ethiopia, please.
I think what I was trying to ask is just for concluding remarks right now. It's not a question of...
I googled the data. In a letter to the UN, Sudan said deeply concerned of Ethiopia unilateral filling of the dam. And that's what I said. I didn't say that Sudan went to the UN. I said that Sudan have expressed concerns about the dam. And this is my words clearly. I agree with Dr. Solomon that we could cooperate. I would love this cooperation, but if and can and will is not is wishful thinking. That's why Egypt want a legal cooperation, which could commit all countries to the cooperation and make a mechanism if we disagree, because disagreement is a bound of life between all humanities and between all countries. We can talk about resenting the 1959 agreement forever and how it was bad to Sudan and how it's bad, but the future generation of Egyptians should not pay the price for a treaty they did not sign. We have a lot of, we have water scarcity by classification of the United Nations, and we cannot afford the cost of desalination, although we're trying to develop that. We have a framework of reform of water supply, and we're trying to work for that. I understand the Ethiopian need for development. I appreciate appreciate it. It was clearly written in the 2015. And I appreciate the reconciliatory language from the Ethiopian guest, because this is what we want. We want to